4. The Flood. A caesura in history. The Chaldean account of the deluge. Between the era of myth and the time of legend falls the deluge. Between the oral tradition and the written record lies the flood. And between the Mesopotamian setting of the origins of the world in Genesis chapters 1 through 9 and the Canaanite tales of nomad desert patriarchs that follow Genesis chapter 12, the Hebrew Bible tells of Noah, his ark, and his descendants. The story of God's extermination of all air-breathing creatures, sparing only one man, his family, and what he could save aboard his giant lifeboat, is central to the Judeo-Christian Islamic concept of the human story. The primate of all Ireland in the early 17th century, Archbishop James Ussher, deduced, in a virtuoso display of devotional mathematics, that the ark grounded on Mount Ararat on Wednesday the 5th of May, 1491 BCE. Since his time, more than 200 expeditions have set out for Armenia in search of the ark's remains, the explorers somehow expecting vestiges of its perishable materials to have survived, by Ussher's reckoning, over 3,500 years of exposure to the elements. Nonetheless, some 40 parties have returned with eyewitness accounts of wooden structures looking like sections of a sea-going vessel, frozen under glacier ice or embedded in the rocks. Even some of those who do not take the biblical report at face value and can no longer accept the notion of a universal divine punishment for mankind's irredeemable sin, still believe that the tale is at least based on a real disaster with a real historical setting. One proposal is that the story recalls the re-flooding of the Persian Gulf, which had been a dry river valley until the rising Arabian Sea overtopped the rocky shelf across the Straits of Hormuz. This would have occurred around 10,000 BCE. Others have suggested that a more likely model was the breaching of the Bosporus by the Mediterranean Sea, which inundated the Black Sea basin, until some 7,500 years ago, containing only a much smaller freshwater lake. It is possible that this flood affected the late Paleolithic people so deeply as to form the legend of the Great Flood, according to a paper read to the Geological Society of America in 2003. The conviction that the story of Noah's flood reflected history was reinforced by the public announcement in 1872 that the ancient Assyrians had also told a tale that had astonishing similarities to the one in the book of Genesis. All the themes of the biblical story were there: the warning to the one man to be saved, the construction of a huge vessel, the storm, the flood, the abatement of the waters, the grounding on a mountain, the sending out of birds, a raven, a dove, and afterwards the offering of a sacrifice, of which God smelled the sweet savour. The discovery of this Assyrian precursor was even more piquant because the finder was one of those extraordinary self-taught amateurs almost unique to English scholarship. His name was George Smith. Born in 1840, he left school at 14 to be apprenticed to a firm of banknote engravers near the British Museum. Perhaps the painstaking and meticulous manual work did not satisfy his lively mind, for he spent most of his mealtimes and many evening hours at it that way. It is not at all clear at exactly what point the Dux Bellorum became a monarch in the sense in which we use the word today. There is a profound difference between the two. A war leader is a human figure, wealthy, certainly, socially powerful, surely, with a charismatic and magnetic personality, undoubtedly, but still just a man. Even the legendary Gilgamesh needed the approval of at least one of Uruk's citizen assemblies before embarking on his campaign against Aga of Kish. A king or queen, on the other hand, is, officially at least, marked by the divine. Well into the 1820s, the French monarch was still touching patients to miraculously cure the king's evil, scrofula, or lymphatic tuberculosis of the neck. Only after World War II was the Emperor of Japan forced by the USA publicly to repudiate his incarnate divinity, though he never denied he was descended from Amaterasu, a sun goddess. To pass from one state to the other, to trade earthly humanity for heavenly semi-divinity, to go from whole man to part God, is no easy task. For your fellows to accept your new status, to have your co-citizens truly believe that you are now different in your very essence from them, demands that something quite extraordinary happen. In southern Mesopotamia, in the city of Ur, later credited as Abraham's hometown, the transformation seems to have been achieved by mounting an outstanding dramatic spectacle, a stunning piece of religious theatre, and, as an unintended consequence, bequeathing to us not only the institution of divinely sanctioned monarchy, which has featured as an integral part of statehood ever since, but also one of the most glorious ancient collections of treasures yet discovered.